Don't fucking go crazy on me, okay? Just remember last year at this time we were in a fucking cage, fool, okay?
You remember. I like to forget that.
I say be happy with what you got.
You'll be happy. Me, I want what's coming to me.
Oh, well, what's coming to you, Tony?
The world, Chico. And everything in it.
Say hello to my little friend.
Okay, so what do you call yourself? Eh? ¿Cómo se llama?
Antonio Montana.
Miami in the 1980s was a city on fire. On the surface, it was paradise, white sand beaches, neon lights, and a rising skyline. But underneath the glamour, the streets were drowning in cocaine. The influx of Colombian cartels turned Miami into the epicenter of America's drug trade, flooding the city with billions of dollars and unrelenting violence. The Mariel boat lift brought over 100,000 Cuban refugees to Florida's shores, many seeking freedom and opportunity. Yet hidden among them were hardened criminals who fed the city's chaos. Drive-by shootings, assassinations, and open-air drug wars became part of daily life. Miami earned the grim title Murder Capital of America, where luxury mansions stood side by side with blood-stained streets.
To sensationalize it. And I was there, I saw, it wasn't wild that way in the sense of shooting in the streets would happen rarely, but they happened. People would be gunned down. Families were killed. Drug dealers went after families of each other. So.
Yes.
Was the backdrop that shaped pop culture's fascination with the city, a place where dreams and nightmares collided, and where the American dream was rewritten in cocaine and cash. Today, we're talking about Scarface. In the early 1980s, Oliver Stone was losing control. Cocaine had taken over his life, nearly wrecking his career. But out of that addiction came anger, a need to fight back against the drug that almost destroyed him. That anger poured straight into the script for Scarface.
It got me away from that world of cocaine, because I was doing cocaine myself, and it was interfering with my thought process, and my brain cells were being damaged, So I really needed to get away from America, because I knew too many people here were doing coke. It was a time of cocaine in excess. He thought it was too violent and over the top, and it wasn't what he wanted to do, so he left the project.
Stone didn't like the idea at first. He hated Hollywood's habit of making remakes. Italians again? Can't and won't work on Italians, mafia, and mobsters' too overused idea. The initial 1932 Scarface was about Italian-American mobster Tony Camonte, inspired by Al Capone. Martin Bergman and Al Pacino wanted a good remake of it, but something wasn't clicking. So they invited Brian De Palma at the time, but later he had to quit, and the directing was offered to Sidney Lumet. He was one to come up with the idea of portraying Cubans in Miami in the 80s. He wanted it more political, but when he read Stone's take, he backed away. It was too raw, too violent for his taste.
When Sidney read the screenplay, he didn't quite like it. He felt it should take more of a political direction, and I thought that not only wouldn't work, it wasn't true.
He thought it was too violent and over the top, and wasn't what he wanted to do, so he left the project, which was disappointing.
Martin Bergman had to re-invite Brian De Palma back to the project. Known for his bold style, he saw potential in Stone's vision. But to get clean, Oliver Stone left the United States, writing Far From Temptation. And when he finally delivered the script, it wasn't just a remake, it was a brand new unflinching look at America's drug war. Oliver Stone went all in to bring the most realistic depiction of 80s Miami, meeting with defense lawyers, prosecutors, former and active gangsters. It's during one of these meetings that he was almost killed.
Screenwriter he wants to talk to, he did Midnight Express. They like that, They want to know about the business. But then in the middle of this, we're all coked up in the hotel, and the way conversation goes, and I drop a name just like that, a guy I talked to. Well, he'd been a defense lawyer when I talked to him, but in the past, he'd been a prosecutor, because prosecutors often flip to defense attorneys to make more money. So when I mentioned that name, two of these three guys got really uptight, and they excused themselves, went in the bathroom, and I said I fucked up. I knew I'd fucked up. And I didn't know what was going to come out of that bathroom, you know, if they thought I was some kind of cop, some kind of underground informer, because they hated that prosecutor that put one of them away. So a few minutes went by there, and it was pretty hairy. But I think I was paranoid a bit, because they came out and they didn't have guns in their hands, but they cut the meeting off, and, you know, I went back to my room. They were staying in the same hotel. All night I was tense because I knew they could come and get me. It was their hotel. They owned the island.
Remember that famous chainsaw scene? It was partially inspired by true events. It was not in the script initially, and it was one of the lines Al Pacino improvised. While preparing for the role, Al Pacino would immerse himself in the Cuban community of Miami and spend time hanging out with Cubans in Calle Ocho and Little Havana. One of these days, Pacino meets a guy who shows his guns to him, and how unexpectedly weird he was, treating them like pets. Brian De Palma, famous for his sharpshooter takes and cinematic sense of humor, agreed to add the improvised line to the movie.
Say hello to my little friend here. Okay? How'd you like that? Come on, you want more? Go ahead. Go ahead, you scum! Go ahead! Say hello to my little friend here. Whoa! How'd you like that? You want more? Yeah! Come on! I take you to...
By the early 90s, hip-hop and rap had broken into the mainstream. And in that explosion, Scarface, Tony Montana, and Al Pacino were lifted like legends. The film's most famous line, "Say hello to my little friend," moved beyond the screen, spoken with pride by rising stars and echoed in music comedy and street culture. Black filmmakers and rappers carried it first, turning the phrase into a mantra, a symbol of power and rebellion. From there, it spread everywhere, through sitcoms, cartoons, dramas, even video games, until it no longer belonged to one movie at all. Few lines in cinema history traveled this far, but this one did. Al Pacino coined another masterpiece line right after "Attica, Attica, Attica." "Say hello to my little friend" became bigger than Scarface itself, immortal, unforgettable, and etched forever into pop culture.
Say hello to my little friend.
Say hello to my little friend.
I don't know, so do the fucking impression. Say hello to my little friend. Again. Say hello to my little... Again!
Perhaps one of the best performances by Al Pacino. Though the movie has many references to Howard Hawks' 1932 Scarface, with Paul Mooney in the lead, where he played ruthless Italian mobster Tony Camonte. Al Pacino once said it was a composite character. As a dedicated adept of the method acting, Al Pacino opted to dive deeper into his character's habitat, his environment, his character's mannerisms, gestures, accents, and the way he walked and talked, and even asked the director of photography to talk to him in Spanish only so as to be better prepared for the role. He even had Cubans on the set who would always recommend to him the best way to pronounce words in a Cuban accent.
All I have in this world is my balls and my word. You want to go on with me? You say it. Don't. Then you make a move.
The group that we surrounded Pacino with in the film were all Cuban, basically all Cuban. Anytime that there was a problem in the accent, in Al's accent, they had the right to interfere and suggest that he was off with it.
The Cuban people who I met and spoke with, who gave me a lot of insights into some of the mannerisms and stuff, all of which I tried to put into a capsule and swallow and see what would come out. And I was trying more not to be as authentic, because I don't believe you can really be authentic.
The famous scar on his face was Al's idea. He believed his character was good with a knife, so in one of these fights, he got cut. The knife touched his left eyebrow and then his cheek.
I felt this character was good with a knife and had fought with a knife. And the scar really came from one of those fights, and I thought it would be interesting if it got to the eyebrow, and the action pulled my head away and it went down even further into this part of the face. So there's one up here and here. I like the different places because I think it was evocative of a chaotic wildness in this guy, that he was all over the place. He had one here and one there, you know.
They initially used dry milk powder as a prep for the cocaine scene, but rumors say it was real cocaine.
The cocaine that Al snorted was real. No, I don't know what Al was snorting, to tell you the truth. I do remember we tried out baby milk, which is dried milk, but there was nothing easy to snort because it would get...
Among the actors and actresses who considered roles in Scarface was Jodie Foster, but she turned it down at the very last minute. Carrie Fisher and Melanie Griffith also auditioned for the role. As for Pacino, he desperately wanted Glenn Close for Elvira's role before it went to Michelle Pfeiffer.
I knew he didn't want me, and as the went on, the worse I got, because I just got so afraid. And by the end of it, Brian De Palma was very sweet, and he was really rooting for me, Brian.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, I'm sorry, but you're just bad now. What's going on? and you know, and it was true. And I was like, I know. I'm just like so up in knots. And so he's like, it's not going to work out, babe. Okay, right. So I went away, and then about a month later, they called and they said, we wanted to screen test you. And I was like, kind of freak out at the end.
Yeah.
And
trash the place.
I threw dishes and everything went flying.
Yes.
And I broke things.
That's how you do it.
I was in it.
Yes.
And there was blood everywhere.
What?
And everyone comes running over to me, checking me out for blood. Where am I cut? They're not finding anything. There are no cuts on me. I look over and Al is bleeding.
Oh, no.
Among other prominent celebrities were Edward James Olmos and John Travolta for the role of Manny. Al Pacino, a prominent adept of method acting, insisted on the presence of Cubans during the shooting so he could get guidance on the accent and mannerisms. During that time, producer Martin Bergman was introduced to a young, promising Cuban-born actor, Esteban Ernesto. Echeverria Sampson, also known as Stephen Bauer. Despite better and more known options for Manny's role, Stephen landed the role as was early promised by producer Bergman. The pre-shooting rehearsals took 2.5 weeks, and Al Pacino rehearsed each scene in a room with no props but actors. As was later recalled by Stephen Bauer, it helped to make chemistry among cast members even more cohesive. If Alfred Hitchcock was known as the master of suspense, Brian De Palma went further by incorporating suspense in one of his most legendary scenes.
What about Ernie?
You want a job, Will? Sure, Tony. Okay, you call me tomorrow.
Hey, man.
That famous "you need a bad guy like me" scene became iconic, though at first it faced strong opposition. When Brian De Palma and producer Martin Bergman screened the film, it was met with strong disapproval from conservative Americans. Remember, it was the Reaganomics era, during the nationwide Just Say No to Drugs campaign, even when the slightest hint of glorifying drugs was considered a matter of national security. It was because of its violence and profanity that they wanted to ban the movie. But somehow the producers and the director managed to navigate through the harsh censorship by defending the character as he was, arguing that we need to see how low and how immoral one can become because of drugs. Oliver Stone and Brian De Palma wanted to expose the hypocrisy, not just of the restaurant patrons, but of many Americans at that time. You blame the drug kingpins, yet you're the first in line to buy the blow. Scarface was revitalized and repopularized in the early 90s, rappers like Nas, Jay-Z, as they identified themselves with Tony. Hip-hop was considered a pure, evil, destructive element of show business, and society demonized hip-hop artists just like Tony, the bad guy. Initially, Stone thought the restaurant scene dragged on too long. He also featured audiences might cheer for Tony instead of condemning him. The line, "You need people like me," makes Tony sound honest, even noble. But De Palma told Stone, if we cut this, he's just another gangster. With it, he's unforgettable. De Palma argued that the film wasn't about glorifying Tony, it was about forcing the audience to see themselves. By keeping the speech, the audience is implicated. They laugh at Tony, but they also feel accused by him.
You need people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy.
In the late 1970s and early 1980s, cartels in South America were known to execute suspected informants in public ways to send a message. Hanging from helicopters, tossing bodies from planes, or public shootings were documented methods. Stone and De Palma weren't exaggerating. They were grounding Scarface in the brutal reality of the drug trade. Instead of flinching, he locks eyes with Sosa and smokes, showing both contempt for Omar and courage in front of Sosa. Al Pacino was delivering his own message to Sosa. Is that it? You're trying to scare me with this? This is the moment Sosa decides Tony is worth trusting. He sees Tony as a fearless, loyal, and ruthless enough to be an ally. Omar, who had mocked Tony earlier in Miami, dies like a rat. Tony, who stood his ground, rises like a king. Al Pacino once recalled, "I came into Sardi's after the screening and the crowd was like wax figures." Liza Minnelli, who hadn't seen the movie, came up to me and said, "Al, what'd you do to these people?" Pacino recalled. Eddie Murphy came right up and said, "I loved it too, Al." During another screening, Martin Scorsese said, "It's great, but they're gonna hate it in Hollywood." When Scarface hit theaters in 1983, it wasn't just another gangster film, it was a cultural earthquake. Al Pacino's portrayal of Tony Montana turned the immigrant hustle into a raw symbol of ambition, greed, and the dark side of the American dream. Every frame from Brian De Palma's feverish direction to Giorgio Moroder's pulsing synth score captured the excess and the paranoia of an era obsessed with power. What critics once called vulgar became prophetic, a mirror reflecting how far people will go for the world and everything in it. Today, Scarface stands as one of cinema's most quoted, imitated, legendary films, a story that never stopped echoing. What's the moment that defines Scarface for you? Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more iconic stories from the legends of cinema.
This country, you gotta make the money first. Then when you get the money, you get the power. Then when you get the power, then you get the woman.